every page he's like, how could this be? My family is a one step. Like, we get it. Like, you're very conflicted. It's fine.
This meeting is being recorded. Hello and welcome to OCHATO. Okay, no, let's start that again. Can't go that far with the voice. Welcome everyone to OCHATO, the fortnightly podcast, although it's been quite a while, longer than a fortnight, where we drink tea and review manga. I'm Oliver.
And I'm Suellen.
And I'm Jade.
Every 2 weeks, we pick a manga that one of us has recommended, and we read up to a certain chapter and discuss the manga with a megaton of spoilers. This time, we are reading Umineko no Koro ni, or When the Seagulls Cry. This is by Ryukishio 7 for the story originally, and the manga specifically that we're reading is, I believe, by Kei Natsumi. And we're reading up to and including chapter 22, recommended by me. But before diving in, we must know the answer to the most important question. What is everyone drinking?
I am drinking a Twinings tea called Digest. It has spearmint, apple, rooibos, and baobab, and it tastes a bit like bubblegum.
Delicious. How about you, Suellen?
I'm drinking Zinger from Bird and Blend.
Good one.
Lemon and ginger.
Very nice. And I've got turmeric gold from Paka because at the time of recording, it is like Sunday afternoon and I need some caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're reading Umineko no Koro ni, and this was originally a visual novel from 2007, released in Japan and then released worldwide in 2016. It was then also re-released on the PlayStation 3 and a while back, maybe a few months ago now, came out on Steam, which is when I picked it up, played it, loved it, and I was like, right, is there a manga? Turns out there is. So here we are. So Umineko no Koro ni is essentially a murder mystery / I'm going to say romance. It's not going to make much sense yet, but it's a murder mystery from what we've been reading. And it centers around a island that's just off of Japan called Rokkenjima. And it's set in about 1986, where the wealthy wealthy Ushiromiya family have gathered to kind of have their family conference. So there's the family head Kinzo, who kind of made the fortune of his family, and then he's had 4 children, who are Kraus, Natsuhi, Eva, and Rudolph, and they have a lot of bickering, a lot of like being, I guess, wealthy and just awful human beings. And our protagonist for this is Battler, who is the son of the 3rd son of Kinzo. Yes, it's complicated. It gets significantly more complicated. I apologize, but we won't go into that now. What we will go into, however, are the first impressions. So I guess, Jade, what were your first impressions of reading this?
To be honest, I struggled to get a grasp of the vibe of this manga because so straight off I was kind of like, what the fuck? Because you know we have a boob grabbing scene.
Oh mate, that was just why would you do that? That's so unnecessary.
I was like, what the hell is going on here? Because already our main guy is really inappropriate, and then there's a bit of a sudden turn when like they talk about the place. And then Maria's eyes go, ooh, all big and stuff. I struggled to get a good grasp of the vibe because it kind of flip-flopped a lot between like Battler's inappropriateness and then also the scariness. But then it settled into more of the scariness as I went on. So yeah, that was my first impression.
Okay, that's interesting for me to hear because obviously this is adapted from the visual novel, which has a lot more words and time to kind of talk about what it wants to. And so they kind of portray Battler as a bit of a, not necessarily a wild card, but he's almost a delinquent. And that's done, I guess, a bit more gently.
So the boob grabbing still happens in visual novel.
Yes, but I don't think he actually... I'm not sure whether or not he manages. He's like, hey, please stop me because I'm actually going to do this. And then I think what Jessica like punches him away. I'm not sure if that also happens in the manga. It's been a while since I
What
read
is
it.
up with this guy?
He gets a bit more sensible later, don't worry. But yeah, he's a bit again, as I said, a bit of a delinquent and everything that entails.
Yeah, I think he's more like a degenerate. Yeah, I think I share the similar sentiment as Jade. But I think I'm just sort of expected, animation or manga shenanigan, the ecchi, the boob grabbing, and then, but I expect that as like separated from the plot, like the whole story. I feel like you can do without these moments, and it would be fine, and in fact, would be better. But yeah, my first impression is that, okay, get that out of my face and show me what it's actually about. And it did. As soon as that scene over, like Jay said, it got serious and ominous, because you see sort of weird expressions and people talking about this witch, the stories, and I don't know, it did manage to pull me in. But again, even when you get to the main plot, like you'll be like, oh, okay, we forget all about this like boob grabbing stuff. It still manages to like bring it back. These color illustrated ones where there's just really
those were kind of inappropriate as well. I'm gonna agree with you here. I was like, you don't need to be showing this.
Yeah, like sexually suggestive of Maria with Battle. I'm like, bruh.
I was thinking the exact same one. I think I also said bruh when I read it. I was like, come on.
I'm like, what? This is in the middle of a plot. Just show me this image. I'm like, get out of here. We're forgetting this. Like, this is serious. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, but that, I guess, just mixed feelings. That's my first impression, really.
That's fair. For me, I guess it was kind of a different experience because I fairly recently finished like the full visual novel. So I can kind of see all the foreshadowing and everything coming up. And I felt that some of the creepy scenes really benefited from moving over to the manga format. I was also quite surprised that we actually saw the murders or like the aftermath of the murders, because normally we get like just a kind of a blood splat screen and then like the text below, which worked perfectly well. It was then therefore a little shocking seeing these scenes. I also thought that the style that they picked for it worked pretty well too. So I enjoyed the transition to manga, but I think I would have struggled to follow it a lot more if it was my first time reading it. Whereas because it takes it a bit slower in the novel, you can kind of, I guess, pause and read back on it. Not that you can't in a manga, but it takes its time with it a little more. So yeah, it was interesting seeing it in kind of a manga format. So we've talked a bit about Battler. He's kind of a delinquent, some might say degenerate, but I guess he's kind of a wild card because, as he mentions in the first one, his dad Rudolph basically was married to his mum, and then his mum passed away, and he almost like immediately remarried to Kyrie, which Battler didn't really forgive him about, and therefore kind of left the family for a while. So this is his first time returning for 4 years. And we get a few comments in that, and also he makes a few comments. For example, with Shannon, when he's like, "Wow, you've grown up a lot," that kind of thing. And I guess it's interesting being in his perspective because for many of us, this is also something new. So I guess we're kind of relearning with him. Did any of the characters particularly stand out to any of you, or were there any particular moments that you enjoyed?
Yeah, I think it's quite a diverse cast of characters. One person comes to mind is Eva.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she's such like a villainess, but you can't help but be like, yeah, she's pretty smart to do all these things where she puts like this receipt between the door. To, I'm like, who in their right mind want to do this? Like, did you know something was going to go on? But yeah, I think there was this moment that really solidified like her impression in my mind is that she was having this like massive argument with the wife of
Natsuhi?
the first brother. Yeah, Natsuhi. And I think they just decided to split up or something. Like this is when all the murders has happened.
Mhm.
And then you know, Natsuhi was like, oh, you know, like please take care of yourself, you know. I can't remember the exact word, but then and she sort of like she was on her way out, but then she suddenly just turned around and just like kickbox her like almost in Natsuhi's face, but doesn't quite get it. She was like, I don't need your like kind words. I can look after myself. I'm like, yes, girl boss energy. But also, if you see this in real life, it's just hilarious. This person who's like leaving and suddenly just like, oh yeah, I'm a strong independent woman. And she has to hold it there when she makes that monologue. I'm like, wow.
She's definitely quite a strong character.
Yeah, very hot-headed. But yeah, you can't help to obviously hate her. But you see her like in her vulnerable moments where she's sort of with her husband, right, in the room, where she's talking about like, oh, I'm so sorry that I put you guys through this, but I just really hate my brother. I want to be the head of the family. Yeah, you kind of gain some empathy for her. So it's nice. Like I like this manga, I guess the crux of it is like this you know, dealing with this like supernatural witch and murder, but also trying to flesh out this like complex family relations. It's quite interesting to read about.
Indeed, many of those relationships are indeed quite complex. We learn about them more in future chapters, but we've kind of got a taste in chapter 1. Did any of the family members or even the staff stand out to you, Jade?
Yeah, I think for me, Shannon, Sayo.
Mhm.
So obviously we get an insight into her relationship with George, and we're like, oh wow, they were engaged for a short time.
Oh, very short-lived.
Very, very short-lived engagement, right? But yeah, it was interesting seeing their relationship being sort of perceived by the rest of the family, and also how they choose to like deal with it or keep it under wraps and stuff. But I liked how we got like a Shannon POV when she goes back to the house, and I thought that was kind of scary. I'm very jumpy, so it was, you know, I was very on edge when she went back to the house with her, you know, and she saw those lights. Sorry, butterflies, right? Were
Yep.
they butterflies?
They were
Yeah, so
butterflies.
she saw those butterflies, and I was like, she's gonna get killed. So yeah, I'd say Shannon for me in that moment.
Nice.
What about you, Ollie?
When I was first on chapter 1, I actually also liked Eva the most. I liked her just fieriness and the fact that she was not afraid to, I guess, stand up to them. As reading back on it, I mean, my favorite character kind of by the end ended up being maybe Golda, the cook. He doesn't make a very good impression early on. The only thing we really see him do is push some servant duties onto Shannon, which was not very nice.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I ended up really liking him. They're all good though. It's again, this is kind of tainted by the fact that I've had another like 7 times as much content,
Of course.
and so I guess there's a lot more to see. But it's fun seeing them, I guess, back with the family in the first time, in the kind of the first place, and how they react to things. So stuff like you mentioned with Eva doing the paper, and it's like that's not really explained in the first one at all, whereas later on it is. And you're like, that's what's going on. I understand now. There's, funnily enough, quite a lot of that happens. One other character I'd like to quickly mention is Dr. Nanjo, who is the physician. And he's not only like the most stereotypical, almost retired doctor, but I've been reading Agatha Christie novels recently. So I was reading like The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and he's like exactly how I'm imagining the physician in that one. Voice and all.
Ooh.
So there are definitely a lot of characters. We've got, I mean, even in the first one, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 characters in episode 1, which is a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
So the plot is a little hard to talk about, partly because I don't feel a huge amount happens in the first one. We have the Twilights. So we've got, let's start from the start. We have the Battler kind of meeting the rest of the family at the airport. They take a flight, then they take a boat over to Rokkenjima. Then they meet, well, they don't meet Kinzo, do they? He just kind of stays in his study. And then they have a couple of what are called Twilights, where people get murdered.
Mm.
And then suddenly it's over, basically, and most of the characters have died.
Yeah.
Were you expecting so many of the characters to die so quickly?
Yeah, I think my first impression was like, wow, if anyone's going to die, it's going to be the parents first, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids are going to be the one who try to solve things. But I didn't expect the ending. Number one, it's like that they actually all quote unquote perhaps were massacred because there was this letter that they found right in a wine bottle years later. And then it was Maria who wrote it as well, who's like, oh, I hope you can solve this. I'm like, you little, you knew what's going on the whole time. Don't pretend. Yeah, and then they were alive again. I'm like, wait, so Beatrice is real? Wait, because I was sold on the idea of Battler. Like, yeah, of course. Like, come on, like this is a detective like story. Mm-hmm. You know, nothing supernatural going on here. But then you have Beatrice being like, ooh, look at me. I can do magic. I'm like, well, that just threw everything out the window. What is this?
That's funnily enough a recurring theme.
Yeah, so I don't know, because it's funny you mentioned like Agatha Christie. I was fully expecting like, have you guys read was it And There Were None?
Right now, I'm like a third of the way through it. So no spoilers. No spoilers.
No spoilers, but it's like a locked room scenario where it's like everyone is on the same line. This is the exact same scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is not a spoiler, but and there were none. There were no, magical witches who are like, I did it all. But yeah, that's why I thought it was going to be like that book where, it's a human. So I'm interested to see where this, how this, progresses, because I've heard from Ollie that, the visual novel, it's like you see things again and again and again, right? Is that how? Or
kind of.
Yeah.
So later on, I won't really spoil any of it. Same setting, different scenario is kind of what happens. So people might be killed in a different order, and then it goes quite meta, I will say. It's inspired a lot by the Agatha Christie novels and many of those.
Ooh.
So I would say they're quite trope aware when they're doing this. Case in point, Beatrice turning up at the end like, psych, it was magic. So you do eventually get solutions and answers to it, but they are not what you were expecting, is what I will say, which is how I think any good mystery murder novel should be.
Yeah.
Case in point, Roger Ackroyd did not see it coming. Again, I won't spoil that one either for you.
Interesting.
For my part, I did not expect so many people to die so quickly. I was like, we'll have 2 murdered, then we'll wait a while, we'll try and suss them out, and then when we've nearly got an answer, then they'll kill some more. But no, it happens like almost the next day. So that kind of caught me off guard. Jade, were you expecting it?
Sort of. I mean, with all of these, like I wouldn't, like, as soon as we read the kind of inscription, the kind of poem, I was like, okay, here we go, buckle up. We're the ride now. So after that, for me, it was a bit like Danganronpa. I've never read And There Were None, and Then There Were None, sorry. But I just had a look now, and yeah, I can see why you guys have,
It's very similar.
Yeah. But no, I think like with all of these, I was expecting it. I just didn't I didn't expect the art to take the story there.
I get you.
Yeah.
I've got to ask this because I know. Who do you think did it?
Beatrice. I'm
Okay. I will
Yeah,
accept
Beatrice.
any answers you give.
love-
Beatrice, okay.
kidding.
But we haven't even seen her until the epilogue.
Okay, what about Kinzo?
Kinzo, the family head.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Where is he?
Because he's burnt, but
Hmm.
is he there? You don't see the full body, so.
We do see the toes, though.
But like,
He would have just cut his toes off.
No, it's because he had 6 toes on each foot, which is very rare. But he just happens to have it.
you can just mold it, like
Yeah.
mold something that's like meat or bone, like stitch it up and then burn it, and it will look like it's part of the same body. You know.
I like it. Now you're thinking. I dig it. I think that exact theory is discussed, in fact, in the story. So good guess there.
I would have thought like one of the other people who faked their death. Definitely, I didn't think about Kenzo, but I fully support that theory because that would be like the perfect quote unquote alibi.
I
Maybe
like it.
someone who's in like the locked shed, because no one's going to go in there, right? Because with like Eva and
Mhm.
such in that room, you know, people can sort of easily check in on the bodies, or even with the servants. But in the locked shed,
Maybe not.
and the first to die as well, so it's like they'll never see it coming.
That's true. It's true. I'd like to propose the Maria theory that because she was the only one that lived to send the bottle.
That is true.
No, again, no, I can't give answers. It's too complicated.
Exactly.
Um,
Who the heck is Beatrice? Is she just a figment of imagination? What?
again, there's no easy answer to that one either, I'm afraid. Neither of this has easy answers.
I like to think of it as like the through the supernatural stance. I like thinking that Beatrice is real and that she can just come out the painting as butterflies.
Jade, you're actually cutting very close to the core of the story that they're trying to tell here.
Ooh.
You know, was it magic? Was it a murder? Do you subscribe to the magic theory? If so, you've got your nice easy answers.
I subscribe to both. I think it's magic murder.
It is murder by magic, or at least according to Beatrice.
Yeah.
Beatrice is just a really theatrical woman. She likes to, like, you know, lights.
She is definitely theatrical. She even ends up talking in multicolor later.
What? What does
There's
that mean?
so there's actually a mechanic a bit later on where you have you heard of a devil's proof?
No.
So the idea is that you can have like a murder, and then if there's no way of actually proving it, you could just say like, oh, you know, well, maybe there was like a mystery trap that I don't need to explain that killed them, and you can't disprove this. And later on, they're like, actually, we can. What we can do is we can say a line in red. I'm not sure how that will work in the manga, and that will be absolute truth. That line, and you can base your reasoning off of that, which is
Right.
definitely interesting for storytelling, but is beyond the scope of this chat right now. What we are talking about, however, is the manga, and manga has many things. One of which is artwork. Now, the visual novel has quite different artwork, and it's got kind of 3 different sets of sprites. The original were very kind of, I mean, have you seen the pictures from the original? They're very like stylized.
Very old, I feel like.
Yeah.
Very like the visual novel you're saying.
Yeah. The PS3 ones I prefer. Anyway, the manga I felt was more in the kind of spirit of the PS3 ones, and was a bit more, I wouldn't say in rough, but intended in that way, stylized. How did you feel about it?
I thought that the art was good. It provided a real sense of spooky atmosphere to the events occurring in the manga. I thought that Most of the people could be generally discerned amongst each other, but I had a bit of a harder time distinguishing between some of the adults, specifically the adult men. But I also liked that their clothing bears all their clothing is different, but bears the same symbol.
The one-winged eagle.
The one-winged eagle. I like that there are different iterations of that, expressed through everyone's clothing. And I thought that what struck me especially was that the facial angles really conveyed a lot of the scary elements of the manga. Very atmospheric, and I like how they paced it as well.
Nice. How about you, Suellen?
Yeah, it's really good. It conveys all the the craziness. You know when someone's about to shoot someone or get really angry. I think the manga did really well. And yeah, the gory scenes are quite gory, but I guess when it's like that mutilated and it's in black and white, you can hardly see like the how horrible it is at that point. It's just a big mesh.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah, definitely, but it's still really well done. But I think one thing is like, this is more about the text. There's just a lot of text.
There's a lot of text indeed.
Yeah, I guess that took away the experience a little, because it's like you just constantly be like, oh, I have to read through all of that. But then it's also, it kind of takes away from the atmosphere a bit, because you're seeing these characters in like deep emotion, but they're just all blocked by a lot of text, which is nice when they have a 2-page spread, when it's just them feeling things and no text. Yeah, because that's the one critique, I guess, but you can't help it. This is a very complicated story, but maybe Battler stop having so much monologue. Internal monologues.
No.
Every page he's like, how could this be? My family is a one step. Like, we get it. Like, you're very conflicted. It's fine. You don't have to mention it every time there's new information.
It's true.
Yeah, that's
I kind of agree with your point on the text, and the same holds true in the novel, where there's a lot of talking, especially in the first one. And I felt it hurt the pace a little bit, which later on, I guess it becomes more important, and you kind of need to drill certain things in, like who the characters are and kind of what they're thinking. And it's also important, I guess, to get in the mindset of how Battler thinks, because of him trying to, I guess, solve this. For the art, I liked it. It was a little, I don't want to say messy, but there's a lot going on in the art. And I felt that in those scenes of action or really intense, case in point, the last page 45 of chapter 21, where he's like, I won't acknowledge the witch, and he's just like yelling. And then the next two, which are just kind of the back of a laughing Beatrice and then just seagulls, I thought was fantastic. So I really like those kind of scenes where you get drama and then just calm. And I felt that the manga does really well in those scenes. The gore, I think I agree, having it in black and white definitely helped it not be too much, but it was quite a lot more visceral than I was expecting, to be honest with you.
How did it compare with the visual novel?
So the original, I think it looks way better. The original was looking kind of goofy, to be honest with you. I respect what they've done. I do not like it. Some may. I do not. I played with the PlayStation 3 sprites. I think that you get a lot more exaggerated expressions other than a certain character in the manga, which I think does really well, again, for those dramatic moments. But then you have a lot of more calm moments when they're literally there sitting, drinking tea, talking about stuff. And I'm like, this just doesn't need to be this dramatic. And in the novel, it's not. So I think it's less clear than the novel, but sometimes to its own benefit. One other thing I'd like to mention briefly is the voice acting in the visual novel is so good, but it also means that now I can't not read the manga in each character's voices, which makes things kind of weird at points, to be honest with you, but pretty fun. I kind of, as I said earlier, this for me this felt really short, partly just because it was in context. But for either of you, were there any particular moments that stood out to you?
I want to say the moments when like everyone first discovers that someone has been killed, because then it really ups the stakes. I feel like it's a very exciting time. Well, not exciting in like a bad way, because obviously someone's been killed, but like then we as a reader get the chance to sort of go along on this ride with them, and it's like something new. Like how did this person die? Who did it? What will happen next? So I think any time that anyone gets killed is a standout moment for me. What do you mean?
Jade, you're on a list now.
Oh God, the FBI is coming to get you.
What do you mean?
Anytime when someone dies, it's a standout moment for me. Jade, 2021.
I just love the excitement. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, it's like the creepy moment when I think there's a point in the story when I think Battle is like confronting the servants or something, and they all suddenly like looking at something that he can't see. Like, and their eyes are following something, but he's like, "Where are you looking? What do you mean?" Beatrice is here. That was kind of creepy. I like that. And that makes me wonder, maybe they're all in on it if Beatrice is not real, right? And if it's real, then damn, again, you're gonna fight a ghost or spirit or magical witch.
A witch, indeed.
Yeah.
I think for me, I had two bits that stood out. One was the first Twilight when Natsuhi, the mum, is trying to protect the kids from seeing, I guess, their parents dead. And I just really like the art there and the kind of intensity that was going on. It's also nice how we get that calm bit with her and the kids in the morning. And she seemed kind of, I guess, stuck up at first. And then we see a kind of softer side of her. And then we see her trying to protect them, which I really liked. And I thought, I don't know, I think it looks great. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the last scene when Battler's just yelling, like, "I won't accept it," was very dramatic and very much like some of the scenes in the visual novel where you'll get like the end credits just kind of flash up while people are yelling, which I love it.
Yeah, this made me think of one more thing. It's like mystery that that I guess there's going to be a little pieces throughout this first episode that we don't get to solve until much later, but there's another piece where Battler's dad knew that he was going to die. He's like, I'm gonna die.
Curious.
Yeah, maybe he's in on it. He's just trying to warn Battler.
Who knows? Who knows indeed. So, having talked about the moments, we have a special section in our chapter where we take a character from the previous manga that we've read into this one. Now, last time we read Descending Stories, or Rakugo, if you prefer. And the main character from that, or one of, was a guy called Yakumo, who's come out of prison and he's apprenticeship as a Rakugo performer. He'd be perhaps a little harder to bring in to the story, but let's say he was on a ferry trip and the ferry, I guess, sunk. It capsized and he ended up on this island as just kind of an uninvited guest, taken in by the family as they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry that happened to you. You can stay here until the typhoon passes." How do you think he'd fare?
I'm in two minds about this one, because on one hand, I feel like he will impress Kinzo so much that Kinzo just lets him in on it. And he's like, and then he can tell the story about this island, and because Kinzo will be like, "You can go free. Beatrice will let you go free." And also because he's not part of the family as well. But on the other hand, I feel like he would fit in well with the kids, and like try and figure it out with them, I guess, but also like try and narrate what's happening. He just start going in a storytelling mode. So maybe he'll die. Maybe. Do I want him to die? Probably not, because then I want him to live to be able to tell the story using his skills. But yeah, what about you guys? What do you think?
I feel like maybe with him in it, the story will be instead of like battler narrating, it could be him who's like narrating the story, like telling someone else about this island and the golden witch. And yeah, I'll be interested to see like him like trying to, like in an argument, like you can see both the characters in real time that they're fighting, but he could also be imitating them, like, and talking to himself while performing Rakugo as those characters. Yeah, it'll be like an interesting way to tell the story. But then you're like, how did this guy? Maybe he's the murderer.
Yeah, I really like that idea. Given that he ends up telling stories for a job,
Yeah,
I think it would be really interesting having it being told by him, especially given either just being told by him and he's kind of initially unconnected and then later turns out to be connected, or you could have it like, you know, how did he get out? Why is he alive? You know, what's going on? I reckon you could get a very good plot out of that. I'd be interested to see it, but I think he'd do well either way. Of course, you could always pull a fast one and have him be the murderer, but I think that would be a bit too simple for some of the plot that happens. So before we wrap up, do you have any particular final thoughts on this, or what's your summary?
Very, very scary. Please read in daylight.
Yeah, a chilling tale indeed. And apparently there's more, you know, to solve than Beatrice did it all. Can't wait to see how the story unravels.
I guess I have slightly more to say because I've read quite a lot more. It's fun reading the manga version of this. I think the art style they picked for it works really well, but I do think that maybe it could use a little bit fewer words and a bit more kind of show, don't tell. I don't think it suffers that much for it though, and I have really enjoyed seeing it. They've also managed to hit many of the, I guess, important parts and the little clues as to later on. And so being able to spot that foreshadowing is really nice on kind of a reread. I'm going to have to go and play my favourite moments of visual novel after this session. I'm not going to lie to you. So, I've also been told that there's an extra chapter in the manga way later on that explains some stuff that's not really explained in the visual novel. So I might have to take a look at that too. But that's for another time. And speaking of another time, in the next week, what are we reading?
So next episode, we are reading Saint Young Men. This is a manga by Hikaru Nakamura, and we are reading up to chapter 22. And just as a brief, intro to this manga, apparently it is a slice of life comedy manga centering around Jesus Christ and Gautama Buddha. But yeah, apparently they're roommates in an apartment in Tokyo. So yeah, very excited to read Saint Young Men.
I'm thinking about Gautama when you were
Yeah,
you're like, Gautama.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what we're reading next time.
Fantastic. Thank you for listening to this episode of OCHATO. Oh no, I've stolen your line. I'm sorry. Go on, Jade.
Thank you for reading this episode of OCHATO.
We'll see you next time.
Woo!